What is the truth behind Ava's disappearance? Where is she? We are about to find out. Liam's life shatters when his wife, Ava, mysteriously vanishes without a trace. Her car is gone, but her phone and purse are left behind. Something isn't adding up. Then cryptic messages start to appear, suggesting Ava is still alive. But where is she? What secrets has she been hiding? And why has she left these eerie clues for Liam to follow? What do you think happened to Ava? Could she be alive, or is there something darker going on? Let us know in the comments below. Let's begin. Liam sat motionless on the couch, his hands clutching the officer's clipboard, unable to process the reality before him. The words blurred together, but they kept pulling him back to one painful truth. Ava, his wife, the one person who had been his anchor, was gone. Completely vanished. The house, once a warm home, now felt like a prison. The officers had combed through every inch of their house, but found no trace of her. No fingerprints, no evidence of foul play, just a void that seemed to stretch out endlessly. Her car was gone, but her phone and purse remained behind, both discarded carelessly on their bed, as though she had left in a rush, leaving behind the smallest traces of her life. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, the bedsheets twisted and pulled from where Ava had apparently fought to get away. Panic coursed through Liam's veins as he tried to grasp the situation, but it made no sense. The police were methodical but relentless in their questioning. They turned every part of their marriage inside out, scrutinizing every detail. They questioned him about his whereabouts, their last conversation, the smallest disagreements, even things he hadn't thought about in years. Ava's mother, who had never exactly welcomed Liam into their family with open arms, was quick to point fingers, insinuating that he had something to do with her disappearance. Her voice echoed in Liam's mind, each word colder than the last, accusing him, doubting him. "You need to be honest with us, Liam. Any information could help," the officer said, his voice laced with suspicion as he eyed him, waiting for a slip, for a lie, for a hint of guilt. But Liam had nothing to hide. He was innocent, but in that moment, the weight of every question, every accusation, felt like an unbearable burden. He was drowning, trapped in the dark waters of doubt. He couldn't comprehend how things had gotten so twisted. The last argument he and Ava had felt trivial in comparison to what was happening now. A minor disagreement about work, about something trivial that never should have spiraled into this. Liam ran his hands through his short, neatly styled hair in frustration, his deep brown eyes clouded with confusion and panic. His broad nose flared with each breath, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't escape the suffocating pressure of this nightmare. His world was crumbling, and he had no idea why. Days blurred into one another as the investigation continued. The police remained diligent, yet found nothing. Their efforts seemed endless, but ultimately fruitless. They questioned everyone who had crossed their path, friends, co-workers, even the neighbors, but all they uncovered were dead ends. The uncertainty gnawed at Liam like an animal in his chest. Each day that passed, he grew more restless, more consumed by a sense of helplessness. His life, once filled with routine and order, now felt like a constant state of chaos. His work, his friendships, and even his interactions with strangers were all dissected under a microscope. Nothing was sacred anymore. Liam felt exposed, as though every part of him was being picked apart, every flaw, every mistake, laid bare. The police had no leads, but the pressure on Liam never let up. The house that was once a home, filled with laughter and light, felt more like a tomb now. The silence of the empty rooms seemed to mock him, and the absence of Ava's voice, her touch, was a constant reminder of his growing panic. The only sound in the house was the ticking of the clock, loud, unforgiving. Each second dragged on endlessly, each minute ticking away like an hour. Liam couldn't escape the feeling that he was slowly losing time, losing his grip on reality. Then, on the fourth day, his phone rang. Liam answered it with trembling hands. A voice, low and muffled, came through the line. It was almost inaudible, but the message was clear. "She's still alive." Liam's breath caught in his throat. His head swirled with disbelief. Was this a prank? A cruel joke? Or was it real? "Who is this? Where is she? What do you mean?" Liam's voice was a mix of desperation and confusion. But the line went silent, cutting off without warning. The call ended, leaving Liam sitting there, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't make sense of it. Was this a sign that Ava was still out there somewhere? Or was it someone playing a game with him? The mix of hope and dread surged through him, twisting his stomach into knots. How could she be alive? Why hadn't she contacted him directly? The uncertainty felt worse than the silence. Could he trust this message, or was it just another layer of manipulation designed to keep him in the dark? The days turned into weeks, and still the messages continued. They were always cryptic, sometimes just one word, other times rambling and incoherent. But the consistent theme was the same. Ava was alive. Each message left Liam with more questions than answers. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him, monitoring his every move. Was he being led on some wild goose chase? Or was this the help he so desperately needed? Unable to wait for the authorities any longer, Liam took matters into his own hands. Every night, after the police left and the house grew silent, he would search online, questioning everyone he could, trying to find something, anything, that could lead him to Ava. He visited old friends of hers, acquaintances, people who might have information but weren't talking. Each encounter left him more exhausted, but the flicker of hope, no matter how dim, kept him moving forward. It was on one of these nights that Liam uncovered something that made his blood run cold. He found an old address tied to Ava's past, a name he didn't recognize, buried in an old message thread. Ava had been involved with someone dangerous, a man with a notorious reputation. The more Liam dug, the more his suspicion grew. How had he not known about this part of her life? What had Ava been hiding from him? His mind reeled as the implications hit him like a blow to the chest. Had this man had something to do with her disappearance? Or was he merely a piece in a much larger, more complex puzzle? The more Liam uncovered, the more he realized just how little he knew about the woman he had married. A few days after his disturbing discovery, Liam received a letter that changed everything. The letter was postmarked from a city Ava had once mentioned in passing, a place he had never known her to frequent. Inside, there was only a single photograph. Ava, smiling softly, standing beside a man Liam had never seen before. The letter itself was short, almost too short, and its words sent a chill through Liam's spine. "She's not missing. She's waiting for you to find her." For a moment, the room around him felt like it was spinning. Who was this man in the photo? Why hadn't Ava told him about him? What was this all about? His mind raced, heart pounding in his chest as his gaze shifted between the photo and the letter. The handwriting was Ava's. There was no doubt about that. But why hadn't she contacted him directly? Why had she left clues for him to find her, but never reached out in person? Fear tightened around his throat, but it wasn't just fear of the unknown. It was something darker. Something wasn't right. The more he thought about it, the more Liam felt that everyone around him, friends, family, even the police, had been hiding something from him. Ava's family was suspiciously quiet about her past, her friends reluctant to speak about certain moments in her life, as if she had been keeping secrets from him the entire time. His pulse quickened as a new, terrifying possibility emerged in his mind. What if Ava had been involved with someone from her past, someone dangerous, someone Liam could never have imagined? What if the person she had trusted most had been lying to him all along? As the pieces of this puzzle fell into place, Liam realized that the truth was darker, deeper, and more complex than he ever imagined. Ava had been keeping secrets, but what were they? And why hadn't she trusted him enough to confide in him? Liam's obsession with finding Ava grew stronger with each passing day. He couldn't sit idly by any longer. No longer could he wait for the police to connect the dots. Every lead he had followed had been a dead end, and now he was determined to find his own answers. He traced Ava's steps back to a part of the city he had never set foot in. The buildings were run down, the streets narrow, lined with stores that seemed to be on the brink of collapse. It was the kind of place where secrets thrived in the shadows. It was here that Liam encountered someone from Ava's past, someone who seemed to know far too much. The man was a former associate of Ava's ex-fiancé, a person who had been involved in the kind of shady dealings that Liam had never known about until now. This man, with his rough exterior and dark eyes, claimed to know where Ava was. At first, the man seemed like a beacon of hope, a potential ally, but something felt off. The man spoke in cryptic phrases, mentioning things about Ava's past in hushed tones. His words became more incoherent as the conversation continued, slipping into layers of deception that Liam couldn't untangle. Liam's gut twisted with unease. There was no help here, only a trap. The man wasn't offering assistance. He was pulling Liam deeper into a web of lies. As the realization dawned on him, Liam's body stiffened, the adrenaline coursing through him as he readied himself to escape the man's grasp. But as Liam turned to leave, the man's voice stopped him. "Careful, Liam," the man called, his tone more menacing now. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into." Liam's heart raced as he moved away, every step feeling like it was pushing him further into the darkness. The shadows of the city pressed in, and he realized just how deep Ava's secrets ran, and how dangerous the path he was walking had become. Liam's steps echoed down the narrow hallway of the abandoned warehouse, each footfall ringing with a sense of finality. He had known this place, or at least, he thought he had. Ava had mentioned it once in passing, a place she feared, a relic from her past. She had told him nothing else, leaving Liam to wonder why she never wanted to revisit it. But now, standing in front of the dilapidated doors, Liam understood. It wasn't just the building that was a reminder of what had been buried. It was everything. The shadows that clung to the edges of his thoughts, the silence that consumed the air around him, and the overwhelming fear that crawled beneath his skin. The past had a way of resurfacing when it was least expected. The moment he stepped inside, the familiar, musty smell hit him. Dust and decay hanging in the air like forgotten memories. The warehouse was dimly lit, flickering lights casting long shadows across the cracked concrete floor. But what stood out the most was the feeling that something was waiting, something dangerous, lurking in the corners. Ava had been here. She had come to this place for a reason. She had known about the danger, the enemies, the conspiracy, but somehow she had managed to leave behind a trail for Liam to follow. He wasn't sure if she had done it on purpose, or if she had been forced into leaving these clues behind, but he couldn't ignore them. He couldn't ignore the fact that he was getting closer to the truth. A series of low, muffled voices broke his reverie. The walls seemed to pulse with tension, and the air was thick with anticipation. Liam turned to face the sound, his body poised for a confrontation. And there she was, Ava. But not the Ava he knew. She stood with a group of unfamiliar figures, her expression hardened, distant. Her eyes locked onto his, but they didn't soften. "This is the only way," she said, her voice hoarse, strained. "I had to protect you, Liam. I didn't want you to get involved, but I had no choice." Liam's heart clenched. He had found her, but the woman standing before him was not the one he had married. This wasn't the woman who had kissed him goodbye every morning or shared quiet moments in the kitchen. The Ava standing before him now was guarded, cold even, and as the weight of the situation settled in, Liam realized just how much had been kept from him. Ava was not only involved in the covert organization, she was deeply entrenched in its dealings. She had been working with them for years, and now her decision to fake her death had led them both down a path that neither of them could turn away from. But the moment of truth had arrived. Liam could no longer deny it. Ava had left these clues for him, hoping he would find her. But at what cost? She had endangered them both to protect him from the world she had been sucked into. "Why didn't you trust me, Ava?" Liam asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at the ground, her hands trembling by her side. "I didn't want you to be a part of this," she whispered. "I thought I was protecting you." Liam couldn't shake the bitter taste of betrayal that lingered in his mouth. Every word Ava had said, the confession about the syndicate, the lies, her secret life, rang in his ears, making it impossible to think straight. He had loved her. He had trusted her. They had built their lives together, or so he thought. But now, with the truth laid bare, Liam felt like everything he had believed in had been reduced to rubble. His gaze fixed on Ava, but it was no longer the woman he had fallen in love with standing before him. It was a stranger, a woman he thought he knew, yet she had kept him in the dark, allowed him to live in a world of lies. The man she had trusted most had become a stranger, too. The anger inside him swelled. He had never been the type to let his emotions get the best of him, but right now, it was impossible to ignore how deeply he felt the sting of betrayal. Ava was the love of his life, and now she had been tangled up in a dangerous game that had been playing out in the shadows for years. How could she do this to him? "Ava, I don't even know where to begin," Liam muttered, his voice low but shaking with hurt. He turned away from her, his hands pressing against the cold wall, as if the physical pain could somehow ease the ache in his chest. "You said you were protecting me, but how is keeping me in the dark protecting me? How is pushing me away helping me?" Ava stepped closer, her breath shallow, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I was protecting you. You don't know what they would have done if they found out. You'd be dead, Liam." The words hit him like a slap to the face. Dead? Was that what she really thought? That by lying to him, by keeping him in the dark, she was saving him? Liam closed his eyes tightly, the weight of the realization crashing down on him. "Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why didn't you trust me enough to let me fight with you? Fight for you?" Liam turned around to face her again, his deep-set eyes now filled with a mixture of sorrow and frustration. His jaw was clenched tightly as the words escaped his lips, each one sharper than the last. "I would have fought for you, Ava. If you had just told me—" Ava's eyes were glassy with unshed tears. She had been crying silently for hours, her face a mixture of guilt and pain. She had made choices that had torn them apart, and no matter how hard she tried to justify it, she knew she had betrayed him. "I never wanted this for you. I never wanted you to be dragged into this world." Liam stared at her, his fists balled by his sides. "You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't have found out eventually? I was already in this world, Ava. Whether you wanted me to be or not, we were in it together. Ava took a step forward, her hands trembling as she reached out to him. I didn't want you to see what I've seen. I didn't want you to become a part of this dangerous world. I wanted to protect you, Liam. I did what I thought was best. I've been carrying this burden alone for so long. I thought I could keep you safe, but I was wrong. Liam stepped back, his chest heaving with frustration. You were wrong? Ava, how many times do I have to tell you? We're in this together. You didn't have to protect me by shutting me out. You didn't have to carry the burden alone. I'm your partner, Ava. The room felt suffocating, the tension thick enough to choke them both. For a moment, they were silent, standing apart from one another in the echoing space of the warehouse. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. They had been living a lie, and now that the truth had been revealed, neither of them knew how to navigate the wreckage of their relationship. Liam's mind raced, his heart torn between love and hurt. He had spent years trusting her, and now the foundation of everything they had built was cracked. The woman standing before him had been deceiving him the entire time. But even as the anger threatened to consume him, a small part of him still wanted to understand, wanted to believe that she had acted out of love. I don't know if I can forgive you, Ava, Liam whispered, his voice barely audible. But I need to know. Was any of it real? Was our love real? Ava's eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer, her hand shaking as she reached out for him. It was real. I swear to you, it was real. Liam looked at her hand, but he couldn't bring himself to touch it. The emotional distance between them felt insurmountable, and he wasn't sure if he could close the gap. The truth had shattered everything, and now there was nothing left but the broken pieces of their once perfect relationship. Liam's heart pounded as he stepped deeper into the heart of the syndicate's labyrinth. The dim lights flickered overhead, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls of the abandoned warehouse. This was it. He was at the end of the road, standing on the precipice of a truth he wasn't sure he was ready to face. Ava had led him here, piece by painful piece. She had tried to protect him, to shield him from the darkness of her past, but the darkness had swallowed them both whole. Each clue she had left behind, each cryptic message, had brought him closer to the truth. But nothing could have prepared him for what was waiting just beyond the door. As he walked down the narrow corridor, his thoughts raced. He had learned so much about Ava's past, the secret life she had kept hidden, the dangerous enemies who had hunted her, and the father she had never told him about. The man in the photograph, the one who had claimed to be dead, was alive. He had been manipulating Ava's life from the shadows, using her as a pawn in a game that had spiraled out of control. The betrayal stung like 1,000 needles, but it was more than just the lies. It was the realization that Ava had been forced to carry the weight of their lives on her shoulders for years. She had kept him in the dark, thinking she was protecting him, but in the end, it had only brought them closer to the edge of destruction. Liam's footsteps slowed as he reached the door. His hand shook as he placed it on the cold metal handle, his mind reeling. What was he walking into? What would he find on the other side? He pushed the door open, and the truth hit him like a freight train. There, standing in the center of the room, was Ava's father, the man who had once been a shadow in their lives, now standing before him, his cold eyes meeting Liam's with an air of superiority. His presence filled the room, the weight of his power and influence bearing down on Liam. "You've made it this far, Liam," he said, his voice smooth and calculated. "But the real question is, what are you going to do now?" Liam's breath caught in his throat. He had known this moment was coming, but the reality of it felt overwhelming. Ava's father had orchestrated everything. He had pulled the strings from behind the scenes, manipulating not just Ava, but Liam as well. It was all part of a much larger plan, one that had been set in motion long before Liam had ever entered the picture. "You knew about this," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You knew about her past. You let her keep it all a secret from me. And for what? To protect me? To keep me in the dark while you used her?" Ava's father smiled, a cold, detached smile that made Liam's blood run cold. "I didn't want you involved, Liam. I didn't want you to be a part of this world. But you had to be. Ava was never going to escape her past. She was always going to be a part of this, whether you liked it or not." Liam's anger flared. "You had no right to do this to her, to make decisions for her without her consent, to keep her trapped in this world." Ava's father's smile faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. "She made her choices. I just helped her make the right ones. And you? Well, you're just a part of the equation." Liam's fists clenched at his sides. "You used her. You used both of us. But it's over now. I'm taking her away from this." The room seemed to darken as Ava's father stepped forward. "It's never over, Liam. The syndicate doesn't just let people walk away. If you think you can take her from me, you're gravely mistaken." Liam felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The danger was real. The walls were closing in, and he realized that the fight was far from over. But he wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when he was so close to saving Ava. "Try me," Liam spat, his voice hard and filled with resolve. "I'm not leaving here without her." As if on cue, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind him. Liam turned quickly, his heart racing. But it wasn't just Ava's father standing before him. The entire syndicate was closing in, surrounding him, ready for the final confrontation. The standoff in the warehouse was a battle for their future. Liam's heart thundered in his chest as the syndicate closed in, the walls pressing in on him from every side. He could feel the weight of his decisions bearing down on him, but he couldn't back away. Ava was counting on him. The air was thick with tension as Liam stood his ground, eyes locked on Ava's father. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready for whatever came next. This wasn't just about saving Ava anymore. This was about redemption. It was about reclaiming their lives from the shadows that had kept them both trapped. The syndicate was ruthless, its members cold and calculating. But Liam wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had already lost too much to fear the unknown. This was the fight of his life, and he was ready to face it head on. "You think you can just walk away from this?" Ava's father asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just take her and run? It's not that simple, Liam." Liam's gaze was unwavering. "It's that simple. You've had control over her life for far too long. I'm ending it now." Ava's father stepped forward, his expression turning hard. "You have no idea what you're up against. I've spent years building this empire. You think you can destroy it in a single moment?" Liam took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to destroy it. I'm trying to save her." The tension in the room escalated as the syndicate members moved closer, surrounding Liam and Ava's father like a pack of wolves. But Liam refused to be intimidated. His eyes never left Ava's father, and his voice was steady, filled with a quiet resolve. "I'm taking her away from this," Liam repeated, "no matter what it takes." Ava's father's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Liam thought the man might strike. But then something changed. The silence in the room grew heavier, and the air seemed to shift. The doors to the warehouse suddenly burst open, and in the chaos that followed, Liam seized his chance. With Ava's father distracted, Liam grabbed Ava's hand and pulled her toward the exit. The final confrontation had come, and Liam knew that this was their moment to escape. The syndicate might have been powerful, but it couldn't stop them now. Together, they would fight for a new life, a life free from the shadows that had controlled them for so long. The world outside the warehouse felt surreal, as if the weight of everything that had just happened hadn't fully sunk in. Liam and Ava stood in the shadow of the decaying building, the sound of sirens growing louder in the distance. They were free from the chains that had bound them, free from the ghosts of their past. But the journey hadn't been easy. The confrontation had been brutal, and the cost had been steep. As the dust settled, Ava's father had been arrested, his reign of manipulation and deceit coming to a dramatic end. The syndicate that had once ruled their lives was in disarray, but it was a victory tainted by the scars of the battle. Ava turned to Liam, her face tired but determined. The wind blew softly, pulling at her natural hair as the light of the setting sun bathed the world in golden hues. It was the first time in a long while that she had felt something other than fear. It was peace. Real peace. "I didn't think we'd make it out of there alive," she whispered, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Liam squeezed her hand tighter, his own body heavy with the weight of everything they had just survived. He knew the truth now, about Ava's past, about the choices she had made, about the deep, complicated life she had been forced to lead. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered now was the future they would build together. "You saved me, Ava," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "You saved us both. And we're going to be okay. I don't care what happens next, as long as we're together." Ava's eyes welled with tears, but she held them back, blinking them away with a soft breath. For so long, she had carried the weight of her decisions alone, thinking she had no one to turn to. But now, standing beside Liam, she realized that the truth had set them free in more ways than one. She let out a shaky breath, a weak smile tugging at her lips. "I never thought I'd hear you say that." Liam laughed softly, the sound of it freeing them both. "I never thought I'd say it either." They stood there for a moment, lost in the realization of what they had just fought for. The shadows of their past no longer loomed over them. They had come through it, battered and bruised but alive. And for the first time in ages, Ava could finally breathe without fear. The next few days were a whirlwind. The police had taken the necessary steps to dismantle the criminal organization, and with it, the shadow that had hung over their lives had been lifted. Ava's father had been arrested and taken into custody, and though his arrest marked the end of a chapter, the emotional scars would remain. The fight had been long, and the emotional toll was immense. But in the aftermath, Ava and Liam began to rebuild. Their relationship, tested and fractured, started to heal. The journey to trust each other again wouldn't be easy, but they both knew they were stronger for having survived. The world outside felt like a new beginning, and for the first time in months, Liam didn't feel the weight of the past on his shoulders. He had the woman he loved beside him. They had a future to look forward to, one where they could finally move forward, unburdened by the darkness of their past. Days turned into weeks, and slowly but surely, Ava and Liam found their rhythm again. They spent quiet nights together, rebuilding their connection, taking it one step at a time. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The future was uncertain, but together they knew they could face whatever came next. Liam often found himself reflecting on everything they had been through. It was hard to believe they had come out on the other side of the chaos. They had faced impossible odds, fought against overwhelming darkness, and in the end, they had won. But it wasn't just the battle for survival that mattered. It was what they had found in each other. Through the lies, the betrayals, and the pain, they had found love again. And in the end, that was enough. They had learned that the greatest battles weren't fought with weapons, but with heart, with the courage to face the truth, the strength to forgive, and the will to fight for the people who mattered most. As they stood on the porch of their new home, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors, Liam turned to Ava. He could see the change in her, the strength in her eyes, the peace that had replaced the fear. They had both come a long way, and now, for the first time in a long while, they were ready to embrace the future. "I'm ready for this," Liam said softly. "I'm ready for our new beginning." Ava smiled, her face lighting up with the warmth of the moment. "Me too." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the promise of tomorrow hung in the air, uncertain, but full of hope. The past was behind them, and the future was theirs to create. Together. Wow, what a ride. If you enjoyed this twist-filled journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories by Lane for more unforgettable drama and surprises. And before you go, tell us, what would you have done in this situation? Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and remember, twists you will not see coming await in every chapter,